David IV, also known as David the Builder, of the Bagrationi dynasty, was a king of Georgia from 1089 until his death in 1125. Popularly considered to be the greatest and most successful Georgian ruler in history and an original architect of the Georgian Golden Age, he succeeded in driving the Seljuk Turks out of the country, winning the major battle of Didgori in 1121. His reforms of the army and administration enabled him to reunite the country and bring most of the lands of the Caucasus under Georgia's control. A friend of the church and a notable promoter of Christian culture, he was canonized by the Georgian Orthodox Church, Sobriquet and Regnal Ordinal. The epithet Aghmashenebeli, which is translated as the builder, the rebuilder, or the restorer, first appears as the sobriquet of David in the charter issued in the name of King of Kings Bagrat in 1452 and becomes firmly affixed to him in the works of the 17th and 18th century historians such as Parsadan Georgian Ignatashvili and Prince Vakushti. Epigraphic data also provide evidence for the early use of David's other epithet, the Great. Retrospectively, David the Builder has been variously referred to as David II, III, and IV, reflecting substantial variation in the ordinals assigned to the Georgian Bagratids, especially in the early period of their history, owing to the fact that the numbering of successive rulers moves between the many branches of the family. Scholars in Georgia favor David IV, his namesake predecessors being David I Curopalates, David II Magistris, and David III Curopalates, all members of the principal line of the Bagratid dynasty. Family background and early life. The year of David's birth can be calculated from the date of his accession to the throne recorded in the Life of Kings David, written c. 1123 to 1126, as Coronicon 309, that is, 1089, when he was 16 years old. Thus, he would have been born in Coronicon 293 or 294, that is, 1073. According to the same source, he died in Coronicon 345, when he would have been in his 52nd or 53rd year. Professor Cyril Tumanov gives 1070 and the 24th of January 1125 as the dates for David. The earliest known document that makes mention of David is the royal charter of his father, George II of Georgia, granted to the Mgvima monastery, and dated to 1073. According to the Life of Kings David, David was the only son of George II. The contemporaneous Armenian chronicler Matthew of Edessa mentions David's brother Totima, who, according to the modern historian Robert W. Thompson, was his sister. The name of David's mother, Eileen, is recorded in a margin note in the Gospel of Matthew from the Skarastavi monastery. She is otherwise unknown. David bore the name of the biblical king-prophet, from whom the Georgian Bagratids claimed their descent and whose 78th descendant David was proclaimed to be. David's father, George II, was confronted by a major threat to the Kingdom of Georgia. The country was invaded by the Seljuk Turks, which were part of the same wave which had overrun Anatolia, defeating the Byzantine Empire and taking captive the Emperor Romanos IV Diogenes at the Battle of Manzikert in 1071. In what the medieval Georgian chronicle refers to as Didi Turkoba, the Great Turkish Invasion, several provinces of Georgia became depopulated and George was forced to sue for peace, becoming a tributary of the Sultan Malik Shah I in 1083. The great noble houses of Georgia, capitalizing on the vacillating character of the king, sought to assert more autonomy for themselves. Tbilisi, the ancient capital of Kartli, remained in the hands of its Muslim rulers, and a local dynasty, for a time suppressed by George's energetic father Bagrat IV, maintained its precarious independence in the eastern region of Kakheti under the Seljuk suzerainty. accession to the throne. Watching his kingdom slip into chaos, George II ceded the crown to his 16-year-old son David in 1089. Although the historical tradition founded by Prince Vashti in the 18th century and followed by Marie Félicité Brosset in the 19th states that David succeeded George upon his death, a number of surviving documents suggest that George died around 1112, and that although he retained the royal title until his death, he played no significant political role, real power having passed on to David. Moreover, David himself had been a co-ruler with his father sometime before his becoming a king regnant in 1089. A document of 1085 mentions David as king and Sebastis, the latter being a Byzantine title, frequently held, like other imperial dignities, by the members of the Georgian royal family. David's formal co-option into government may have occurred even earlier, in 1083, when George II left Georgia for the negotiations at the court of the Seljuk Sultan Malik Shah I. Revival of the Georgian state. Despite his age, he was actively involved in Georgia's political life. Backed by his tutor and an influential churchman George of Chondidy, David IV pursued a purposeful policy, taking no unconsidered step. He was determined to bring order to the land, bridle the unsubmissive secular and ecclesiastic feudal lords, centralize the state administration, form a new type of army that would stand up better to the Seljuk Turkish military organization, and then go over to a methodical offensive with the aim of expelling the Seljuks first from Georgia and then from the whole Caucasus. Between 1089 to 1100, King David organized small detachments of his loyal troops to restore order and destroy isolated enemy troops. He began the resettlement of devastated regions and helped to revive major cities. Encouraged by his success, but more importantly the beginning of the Crusades in Palestine, he ceased payment of the annual contribution to the Seljuks and put an end to their seasonal migration to Georgia. In 1101, King David captured the fortress of Zeduzani, a strategic point in his struggle for Kakheti inheritor, and within the next 3 years he liberated most of eastern Georgia. In 1093, he arrested the powerful feudal lord Liparit Bagvashi, a longtime enemy of the Georgian crown, and expelled him from Georgia. After the death of Liparit's son Rati, David abolished their duchy of Kildekari in 1103. He slowly pushed the Seljuk Turks out of the country, recovering more and more land from them as they were now forced to focus not only on the Georgians but the newly begun Crusades in the eastern Mediterranean. By 1099 David IV's power was considerable enough that he was able to refuse paying tribute to the Turks. By that time, he also rejected a Byzantine title of Pan-Hypersebastis, thus indicating that Georgia would deal with the Byzantine Empire only on a parity basis. In 1103 a major ecclesiastical congress known as the Ruis Urbnici Synod was held at the monasteries of Ruishi and Urbnici. David succeeded in removing oppositionist bishops, and combined two offices, courtiers and clerical, into a single institution of Chondidal Msignobata Kutsizi, corresponding roughly to the post of prime minister. Next year, David's supporters in the eastern Georgian province of Kakheti captured the local king Afsatan II, a loyal tributary of the Seljuk Sultan, and reunited the area with the rest of Georgia. Military campaigns. Following the annexation of Kakheti in 1105, David routed a Seljuk punitive force at the Battle of Ursuki, leading to momentum that helped him to secure the key fortresses of Samshvilde, Rustavi, Gishi, and Lori between 1110 and 1118. Problems began to crop up for David now. His population, having been at war for the better part of 20 years, needed to be allowed to become productive again. Also, his nobles were still making problems for him, along with the city of Tbilisi, which still could not be liberated from Seljuk grasp. Again, David was forced to solve these problems before he could continue the reclamation of his nation and people. For this purpose, David IV radically reformed his military. He resettled a Kipchak tribe of 14,000 families from the northern Caucasus in Georgia in 1118 to 1120. Every Georgian and Kipchak family was obliged to provide one soldier with a horse and weapons. Kipchaks were settled in different regions of Georgia. Some were settled in Innerkartli province, others were given lands along the border. They were quickly assimilated into Georgian society. In 1120, David IV moved to western Georgia, and when the Turks began pillaging Georgian lands, he suddenly attacked them. Only an insignificant Seljuk force escaped. King David then entered the neighboring Shirvan and took the town of Karbala. In the winter of 1120 to 1121, the Georgian troops successfully attacked the Seljuk settlements on the eastern and southwestern approaches to the Transcaucasus. Muslim powers became increasingly concerned about the rapid rise of a Christian state in southern Caucasia. In 1121, Sultan Mahmud B. Muhammad declared a holy war on Georgia and rallied a large coalition of Muslim states led by the Arturkiden Ajm al-Din el-Ghazi and Togrul B. Muhammad. The size of the Muslim army is still a matter of debate, with numbers ranging from fantastic 600,000 men to 400,000 to modern Georgian estimates of 250,000 - 400,000 men. All sources agree that the Muslim powers gathered an army that was far much larger than the Georgian force of 56,000 men. However, the 12th of August 1121, King David routed the enemy army on the fields of Didgori, achieving what is often considered the greatest military success in Georgian history. The victory at Didgori signaled the emergence of Georgia as a great military power and shifted the regional balance in favor of Georgian cultural and political supremacy. Following his success, King David captured Tbilisi, the last Muslim enclave remaining from the Arab occupation, in 1122, and moved the Georgian capital there. A well-educated man, he preached tolerance and acceptance of other religions, abrogated taxes and services for the Muslims and Jews, and protected the Sufis and Muslim scholars. In 1123, David's army liberated Dmanisi, the last Seljuk stronghold in southern Georgia. In 1124, David finally conquered Shirvan and took the Armenian city of Ani from the Muslim emirs, thus expanding the borders of his kingdom to the Araxes basin. Armenians met to him as a liberator, providing some auxiliary force for his army. It was when the important component of Sword of the Messiah appeared in the title of David the Builder. It is engraved on a copper coin of David's day. Humane treatment of the Muslim population, as well as the representatives of other religions and cultures, set a standard for tolerance in his multi-ethnic kingdom. It was a hallmark not only for his enlightened reign, but for all of Georgian history and culture. David the Builder died on the 24th of January 1125, and upon his death, King David was, as he had ordered, buried under the stone inside the main gatehouse of the Galatia monastery, so that anyone coming to his beloved Galatia Academy stepped on his tomb. First, a humble gesture for a great man. He had 3 children, the son Demetrius, who succeeded him and continued his father's victorious reign, and 2 daughters, Tamar, who was married to the Sherwan Shah Akhenaten, and Kata, married to Isakios Komnenos, the son of the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I Komnenos. Beside his political and military skills, King David earned fame as a writer, composing Galabani Sanaralisani, a powerful work of emotional free-verse psalms, which reveal the king's humility and religious zeal. Cultural life. King David the Builder gave close attention to the education of his people. The king selected children who were sent to the Byzantine Empire, so that they be taught languages and bring home translations made by them there. Many of them later became well-known scholars. At the time of David the Builder there were quite a few schools and academies in Georgia, among which Galatia occupies a special place. King David's historian calls Galatia Academy. Besides Galatia, there also were other cultural enlightenment and scholarly centers in Georgia at that time, e.g., the Academy of Iqualto. David himself composed 1120 hymns of repentance, a sequence of 8 free-verse psalms, with each hymn having its own intricate and subtle stanza form. For all their Christianity, cult of the Mother of God, and the king's emotional repentance of his sins, David sees himself as reincarnating the biblical David, with a similar relationship to God and to his people. His hymns also share the idealistic zeal of the contemporaneous European crusaders, to whom David was a natural ally in his struggle against the Seljuks. Family marriages: Rusudan, an Armenian princess; Gurandukt, daughter of the Kipchak chief Otrik; Ishu Demetrius I; Prince Baktang; Prince George; Princess Rusudan, who was married to Prince Jadaron of Alania. They had son David Suslin, who would marry Tamar of Georgia; Zurab, son of David IV of Georgia; Princess Tamar, who married Shirvan Shah Manucher III, and became a nun in widowhood; Princess Kata, who has been theorized to be the same person as Irene, who married the Byzantine prince Isakios Komnenos. Burial: a tombstone at the entrance to Galatia Monastery, bearing a Georgian inscription in the Asomtavruli script, has traditionally been considered to be that of David IV, although there are no clear and reliable indications that David was indeed buried in Galatia and that the present epitaph is his. This popular belief had already been established by the mid-19th century, as evidenced by the French scholar Marie-Félicité Brosset, who published his study of the Georgian history between 1848 and 1858. The epitaph, modeled on the Psalm chapter 131:14, reads, "Christ, this is my resting place for eternity. It pleases me, here I shall dwell." Legacy: David the Builder's epoch greatly influenced the national perception of the Georgians. They are still proud of David's victories and dream of his glorious reign. The Order of David the Builder is one of the most prestigious decorations awarded by Georgia. After being elected president of Georgia, Georgia's former leader Mikhail Saakashvili took an oath at David the Builder's tomb at Galatia Monastery on the day of his inauguration on the 25th of January. 2004. Mikhail Saakashvili said it was a symbol of his dedication to follow in David's footsteps, who brought unity and prosperity to Georgia. Ancestry: